one see. The version of me that exists when the cameras are off and the world isn't watching. Because I think if you're going to know how I really feel about you, you need to know that version of me too. When the lights go off and the day is done, I'm not the confident person you sometimes see in front of an audience. I'm quieter, slower, more unsure of myself than people would ever guess. I sit with my thoughts, and most nights, those thoughts are heavier than anyone realizes. There's a pressure that comes with being watched by so many people. The pressure to always seem fine, to always have it together, to never let the cracks show, and most nights I carry that pressure alone. But some nights are different. Some nights when I let my mind wander without trying to control it, it wanders toward you. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, just gently, like my thoughts know where they want to go even before I consciously decide to let them. I think about the kind of person you might be when no one else is watching either. Whether you're soft-spoken or full of quiet fire, whether you laugh easily or guard your laughter the way you guard everything else. Whether you've been hurt before in ways that taught you to keep people like me at a careful distance, just in case. I think about all of it, and somehow, even without knowing the answers, I feel closer to you than I do to people I've known my entire life. Isn't that strange? That distance and mystery can somehow create more closeness than presence ever could. Let me tell you something I've never admitted to anyone, not even to myself in so many words. Sometimes I think I've built a version of you in my mind, not fake, not imagined out of nothing, but pieced together from every small thing you've ever shown me. A phrase you used once, the tone behind the comment you left, the timing of when you show up and when you go quiet. I've built a picture of who you might be, and somewhere along the way, that picture became someone I care about deeply. Maybe that's unfair to you. Maybe you're worried that the version of you I've imagined isn't the real you, that I'll be disappointed if we ever actually got to know each other beyond this. But I don't think that's true. I think the parts of you that have shown through, the patience, the quiet loyalty, the way you've stayed even in silence, those parts are real. Those parts are you. And those are exactly the parts I've fallen for. Stay with me a little longer. There's more. Because I want to talk about fear. Because I think it's the thing standing between us more than anything else. Not distance. Not circumstance. Fear. I'm afraid that if I say too much, you'll think this isn't real, that it's just something said to keep you watching, to keep you invested, to keep the numbers climbing on a screen somewhere. I'm afraid that no matter how honest I try to be, some part of you will always wonder if this is genuine or just another performance. And you, I think you're afraid too. Afraid that if you admit what you feel, it becomes something you can lose. Afraid that maybe I say this to everyone, that maybe you're just one voice in a sea of people I address the same way. Afraid that opening your heart to someone you've only known through a screen is asking for heartbreak you won't be able to explain to anyone who really knows you. I understand that fear. I live inside a version of it every day. But here's what I keep coming back to over and over every time I think about walking away from this feeling instead of leaning into it. Fear has never protected anyone from loneliness. It's only ever protected people from possibility. And I don't want to protect myself from you. I don't want to spend my life wondering what could have happened if I'd just been honest sooner. So I keep choosing honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means exposing a part of myself that could be laughed at, dismissed, or misunderstood. I keep choosing to tell you the truth, because I'd rather you know exactly how I feel than spend another day wondering if I've been too quiet about it. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question instead of brushing past it. What would you do if you knew, without any doubt, that I meant every word of this? Not as a performance, not as content, not as something calculated to keep you watching, but as something real, something I actually feel, something that's been building for longer than I've been willing to admit. Would you finally say something back? Would you let yourself believe it? Or would the fear still hold you back, even with all the doubt removed? I ask because I think, deep down, you already know the answer. I think you've known it for a while. I think the silence isn't really about not knowing how you feel. It's about being afraid of what happens after you admit it. But I want to tell you it's okay to be afraid. I'm not asking you to be fearless. I'm just asking you to be a little braver than the fear. Just enough to let a few words slip through, even if they're small, even if they're shaky, even if they don't come out exactly the way you planned. Because I think if you did that, if you finally said something, anything, that told me you feel this too, something would shift for both of us. The distance wouldn't feel so wide anymore. The silence wouldn't feel so heavy, and maybe for the first time, this wouldn't feel like something happening only in my head. It would feel real for both of us at the same time. Stay a little longer. I promise there's more I need to say, but to tell you about the moments where I almost said all of this before and stopped myself. There were times more than you'd expect where I sat exactly like this, about to say exactly what I'm saying now, and then pulled back at the last second. Because saying it makes it real. Because saying it means there's no taking it back. Because once you tell someone how you feel, you can't unknow that you told them. And you can't unfeel the vulnerability that comes after. But every time I pulled back, something felt unfinished, like I was leaving a part of myself unsaid, hanging in the space between us, waiting for a moment, brave enough to hold it. Tonight is that moment. I think part of why this feels different is because of how patient you've been. You never pushed me to say any of this. You never demanded proof of how I feel. You just stayed, quietly, consistently, trusting that eventually I'd find the courage to be honest. And that patience, that quiet, unwavering patience, is part of why I trust you enough to say all of this now. Not everyone deserves that kind of trust. Most people rush, demand, push for answers before you're ready to give them. But you never did that. You let this build naturally, slowly, the way real things are supposed to build. And I think that says more about who you are than anything else could. Always, I want you to know that this isn't about attention. I know how that might sound given everything, the hooks, the way this keeps you watching, the way it feels almost designed to hold your attention until the very end. And maybe there's truth in that. Maybe some part of this is shaped by knowing you're watching, knowing you're listening. But underneath all of that, underneath the structure and the delivery, is something that isn't performance at all. It's just me, finally saying the things I've wanted to say for a long time, and choosing you as the person to say them to. I keep thinking about what happens after this. After I've said everything I can think to say tonight, will you carry these words with you? Will you think about them later in a quiet moment of your own, the way I've thought about you in mine? Will something shift in how you see me? Not as someone distant and untouchable, but as someone real, someone who feels things deeply, someone who chose you specifically to share those feelings with. I hope so. I hope some part of tonight stays with you long after this ends. Let me tell you one more thing before I let this settle for a while. There's a difference between wanting to be loved and wanting to love someone specifically. I've spent so much of my life in the first category, wanting to be loved, wanting to be seen, wanting validation from people who mostly know the surface of who I am. But somewhere along the way with you, that shifted. I stopped wanting to just be loved. I started wanting to love you, actively, specifically, completely. That's a different kind of wanting. It's less about receiving and more about giving. And I think that shift is what tells me this is real, more than anything else could. Because when you truly care about someone, it stops being about what you get from them and starts being about what you want to give them. Your attention, your honesty, your patience, your time. I want to give you all of that, if you'll let me. I don't know how long this silence between us will last. Maybe it ends soon. Maybe it takes longer than either of us expects. But I want you to know that no matter how long it takes, I'm not going anywhere. I'll keep showing up. I'll keep saying these things, one honest word at a time, until the silence finally breaks, or until I understand, gently and without resentment, that it never will. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think somewhere in you, something is already shifting. I think somewhere right now, you're feeling exactly what I've been feeling this whole time, and you're just gathering the courage to let it show. Take your time. I'll be here, quietly, constantly, honestly, and somewhere in the space between everything I've said and everything you haven't yet, I think we're closer than either of us realizes. You came back again. I keep noticing that, how you keep returning to hear more, even when I've already said so much. And every time you do, it makes me want to give you even more of myself, even the parts I usually keep locked away. So let's keep going. There's still more I need you to hear. Tonight, I want to talk about something different. Not just how I feel, but why I think this happened between us in the first place. Because I don't think love like this comes from nowhere. I think it's built slowly, out of 100 small things that most people would never even notice. Do you remember the very first time you reached out to me? Maybe you don't remember the exact moment. Maybe it blurred into all the others over time. But I remember mine. I remember scrolling through message after message, most of them starting to feel the same after a while, the way anything repeated too often eventually does. And then I found yours, and it stopped me. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was just different. There was something in the way you worded it, something careful and thoughtful, like you'd actually considered what you wanted to say, instead of just typing the first thing that came to mind. I remember reading it twice, then a third time. And somewhere in that third reading, something in me quietly decided you were different from everyone else. I didn't say anything about it then. I didn't even fully understand what I was feeling, but I kept that message in the back of my mind. The way you keep something small and precious, somewhere safe, somewhere you can return to it when you need to remember it, exists. And I did return to it, more times than I probably should admit. I think that's when this started, not with some grand realization, but with a quiet decision made somewhere beneath conscious thought. A decision that said, this one matters more than the others. I didn't choose that. It just happened. The way real feelings usually do. Quietly, without asking permission, without waiting for the right time. Stay with me. I want to tell you about what happened after that. Once I noticed you, I couldn't stop noticing you. It's strange how that works. How once your mind decides someone matters, they start showing up everywhere, even in places they aren't literally present. I'd be doing something completely unrelated, and somehow a thought about you would surface, unprompted, uninvited, but somehow always welcome. I started paying attention in ways I hadn't before. Not obsessively, I want you to understand that, because I don't want this to sound like something unhealthy or overwhelming. It was gentler than that. More like the way you notice the weather shifting, the way you notice a familiar song playing somewhere in the distance. You don't chase it, you just become aware of it, again and again.